We are getting breaking news in the investigation. We've obtained a never-before-seen interrogation room recording, revealing a guest who didn't just witness the truth, but chose to stay inside the inner circle.
There's this thing about expensive soap. I remember how it smelled different from the kind you buy at a drugstore, like verbena or bergamot, some word I couldn't even pronounce. And I noticed it more because my hands were shaking. I was gripping a marble sink at 3 a.m. on an island that didn't even show up on most maps, trying to remember the exact moment I stopped being the kind of person who would walk away. That's what comes back to me first. Not the worst thing, not even close. Just that bathroom, that soap, the low hum of generators under everything, like a noise you can't escape. I stood there staring at my reflection in a mirror that probably cost more than my first car. And I couldn't pinpoint when I made the choice, when I crossed the line from someone who would have said no to someone who didn't. I went to that island more than once, early 2000s. I saw things that made me uncomfortable in ways I didn't even have words for back then, and I left. I didn't tell anyone, not for years, not until it was too late for it to matter the way it should have. People like me, the ones who were there but weren't victims or perpetrators, we don't usually talk. We disappear into normal lives. We pretend none of it ever happened. I tried to do that, I really did, but I couldn't carry it alone anymore. And I know I'm not the only one. There are others who saw things and didn't know what to do. Maybe if I say it out loud, someone else won't feel as alone or as guilty. Because I know what I am. I saw something that should have made me call the authorities immediately. Instead, I got on a boat, flew home, went back to work, and convinced myself I must have misunderstood. Maybe not legally, but morally, I was complicit. Before the island, there was San Francisco, late 90s, a tech conference at a fancy hotel. I'd just sold my first company. Nothing massive, but enough to make me feel like I'd cracked some secret code of the universe. I was 29, wearing a suit I'd bought just for that event, feeling invincible in that very specific, very foolish way you only feel the first time you make real money. That's where I met him. He wasn't on stage. He wasn't speaking. He was just there, sitting in the hotel bar. I was alone, debating whether to have one more drink or call it a night, and he just sat down next to me like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You sold too early," he said. Just like that. I remember being caught off guard, a little annoyed even, but he smiled, not in a mocking way, more like he was letting me in on something. Then he started breaking down my company, its value where it would be in a few years. And he was right, completely right. Numbers I hadn't shared, projections I'd kept to myself. Somehow he knew. It didn't feel strange. It felt impressive, magnetic even. When someone sees things you don't, it feels like intelligence, like power, and I wanted to be around that. I wanted to learn from it. We talked for hours about risk, about building companies, about how the world is actually run by a small group of people, while everyone else just goes along for the ride. That was his phrase, along for the ride. And he made it sound like I wasn't just along for it, I was one of the drivers. That feeling, it was intoxicating. I'd spent most of my life feeling like an outsider, like I was watching other people make the real decisions. And suddenly, here was someone telling me I belonged inside that circle. A few months later, he invited me to dinner in New York. That's when I realized he wasn't just successful, he was something else entirely. His apartment wasn't just expensive, it was obscene. Art that belonged in museums, photographs with powerful people, stories about connections that seemed unreal but were clearly very real. The people at that dinner, lawyers, executives, policy insiders, they all treated him like he was orchestrating something bigger than all of them. And I felt lucky to be there. Chosen. Then there was her, always around, organized, polite, making everything run smoothly. I didn't think too much about who she was. I didn't think too hard about anything back then. The island came up casually, like someone mentioning a vacation home. He described it as a private retreat. Smart people, big ideas, no distractions. It sounded perfect. I was exhausted at the time, working nonstop, questioning everything I was building. The idea of escaping to a place like that? Of course I said yes. The first time I went, it felt like stepping into another world. Beautiful. Almost unreal. White sand, clear water, architecture that screamed money. Everything looked perfect, and for a while, it felt perfect. There were other guests, successful, influential people. Conversations were easy, intelligent. It felt like a reward, like I'd made it. But then there were the things I didn't want to look at too closely. The younger girls, too young. I told myself they were staff, like at any luxury resort. I told myself not to overthink it, because asking questions would have meant admitting something wasn't right. And I didn't want to believe that. Still, there was this undercurrent, moments where things didn't quite fit. A look, a comment, a silence that lingered too long. But everyone else acted like everything was normal, so I followed their lead. I convinced myself I was imagining things. I went back again, and the second time it was harder to ignore. The staff seemed younger, the locked doors more obvious, the behavior more off. Nothing blatant. Nothing you could point to and say, this is it. Just a pattern of small things that didn't add up, until the third visit. That's when it stopped being something I could explain away. One night, I was walking back to my place and needed a bathroom. Mine wasn't available, so I went into the main house and wandered into a part I hadn't seen before. The hallway was cold, unnaturally cold, and there were photographs everywhere. Him with powerful people. But in that lighting, they didn't feel like trophies anymore. They felt like evidence. Then I saw the door, slightly open. I looked inside. What I saw wasn't chaotic or violent. That's what made it worse. It was organized, clinical. There were tables, cameras, paperwork, everything arranged with precision, like a system, like documentation. And there was a girl in that room, sitting still, too young, not interacting, not speaking, just there, while adults moved around her like she was an object. I didn't stay long. I couldn't. I backed away slowly, went back to my room, and lay awake until morning, trying to process what I'd seen. And deep down, I understood it. I understood everything. All the things I'd ignored suddenly made sense. The next morning, everything looked normal again. Breakfast, conversation, laughter. And I sat there pretending to be part of it. I caught his eye once. He smiled. And in that moment, I knew he knew. I left that day, packed my things, got on a boat, flew home. Told myself I just needed time to think, but time didn't fix anything. When I finally tried to push back, carefully, indirectly, it didn't go well. Within months, I was pushed out of my own company, quietly, legally, completely. After that, doors started closing. Opportunities disappeared. Nothing obvious, nothing you could prove. Just enough to make you understand. It took years to rebuild, years of staying quiet, years of carrying it alone. I thought I could move on, that I could bury it. But it never really left. Every time I saw his name, every time I heard a rumor, it came back. That same tightness in my chest, that same voice reminding me, you saw and you said nothing. I lived like that for over a decade, until the day he was arrested. I remember standing in my kitchen, hearing the news and feeling everything at once. Relief, fear, shame. Like all the years I'd spent trying not to think about it had finally caught up with me. And in that moment, I realized something. Silence doesn't erase what happened. It just makes you part of it. I didn't come forward when I first heard he'd been arrested. I remember asking myself that question over and over. Should I say something? But every time I imagined it, there was this hesitation, this voice in my head asking me what I actually knew. I had been to those parties. I had seen things that made me uncomfortable. And then I had left. That was it. That didn't feel like testimony. It felt like a story people wouldn't take seriously. Still, I had seen more than I wanted to admit. I saw rooms that didn't feel right. I saw girls who looked too young. I saw guests who should have known better. But I never witnessed anything outright illegal happening in front of me. What I saw was context, an atmosphere. And you can't prove a crime based on atmosphere alone. That's what I told myself. My lawyer told me to stay quiet. If the FBI came to me, I should cooperate fully, but not volunteer anything. He warned me that the moment I inserted myself into the story, I'd lose control of it. I'd become a headline, a name on a list, and people would assume the worst. So I stayed quiet. I waited for weeks, expecting a knock on the door, expecting a call. Every time my phone rang, I thought it might be them. But it never was. Eventually, I realized why. They didn't need me. I wasn't important. I wasn't a victim. I wasn't a perpetrator. I was just someone who had been there a few times years ago. There were bigger priorities, real victims who could testify, documents, flight logs filled with names. My name was in those logs too. 3 times, 2002, 2003, 2004. Just my name and dates. No explanation. Seeing it online was surreal. I felt exposed and invisible at the same time. Anyone could see it, but no one really cared. A few friends asked me about it. Some were just curious, others wanted details. Gossip, really. I cut those people off. I could tell they didn't care about the truth. They just wanted to feel close to something dark. One journalist reached out about a month after the arrest. They had seen my name and wanted to know what I knew. I told them the truth, that I had been there, that I left because I felt uncomfortable, and that I hadn't witnessed any crimes directly. They didn't publish it. It wasn't enough. They wanted specifics, names, accusations. I couldn't give them that, so they moved on. But I kept thinking about it. Every night, lying awake, I'd go over the faces I remembered, the people who acted like everything was normal. I thought about calling that reporter back and telling them everything. But then I'd imagine the lawsuits, the denials, the power those people had. My word wouldn't stand a chance, so I stayed silent. Then August 10th happened. He died. I was sitting in my office when I saw the news. I just stared at the screen. Part of me felt relief, and I hated myself for it. Relief meant no trial, no testimony, no chance my name would surface. But the victims deserved that day in court, and he took it from them. I still don't know what I believe about his death. Part of me thinks it was inevitable. Another part wonders how many powerful people needed him gone. Either way, the outcome is the same. He's dead. The victims didn't get closure, and the system that allowed it all still exists. After that, I finally did something. I reached out to a victim advocacy group online. I left a message saying I had been there, that I had seen things, and that I was willing to help if needed. Weeks later, someone called me back. I told them everything. The trips, the rooms, the people I remembered. They just listened, took notes, and asked questions. Most of what I said confirmed things they already knew. Strangely, that made me feel better. At least I wasn't imagining it. At least it had been real. Years later, in 2021, I got an email from a woman who said she had been there too. She remembered seeing me. She said I looked uncomfortable, like I didn't belong. She asked if I would talk to her. I read that email over and over before replying. We met in a lawyer's office, neutral ground. She looked like anyone you'd pass on the street, but there was something in her eyes, a weight, something heavy she had been carrying for years. I told her everything I could remember. She asked specific questions, filling in details. Then she shared part of her story. Not everything, just enough. And sitting there, listening to her, I felt small. I had spent years protecting myself. She had spent those same years rebuilding her life. That's when it really hit me. My silence hadn't protected me. It had made me complicit. I apologized. I told her I should have done more, that I should have said something back then. She didn't blame me. She said I had seen her as a person, and that mattered, but it didn't feel like enough. Before I left, I gave her a photo I had kept since 2004. She looked at it for a long time and said she remembered that night. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need to know. After that meeting, I sat in my car for an hour. It felt like I had been carrying something heavy for so long that I didn't know what to do without it. When I got home, I told my wife everything. I had never told her before. I was ashamed. She listened, then told me I should have told her sooner. I started therapy not long after the arrest. It helped me understand something uncomfortable. Most people in my position would have done exactly what I did, stayed quiet, protected themselves. But understanding that doesn't make it right. Now, I try to do things differently. If someone reaches out, I respond. If investigators ask, I cooperate. I tell my story when it might help someone else understand how easily people can ignore what's right in front of them. I think about the girls often, not abstractly, specifically. Faces, moments. One in particular stays with me. She was sitting by the pool, knees pulled to her chest. I walked past her. I almost stopped, almost asked if she was okay, but I didn't. It felt like it wasn't my place, so I kept walking. That moment, small, insignificant, that's the one that stays with me the most, because it was a choice. And I made the wrong one. If I could go back, I'd make the call. I'd speak up. Even if nothing came of it, at least I would have tried. But I can't go back. So I move forward. I try to be the person I should have been then. And if there's one thing I've learned, one thing I would tell anyone, it's this. If you see something, don't wait. Don't convince yourself it's not your business. Say something, even if you're unsure, even if you're afraid, because the cost of speaking up is high, but the cost of staying silent is higher. And you don't realize that until years later, when it's too late to change anything.